Biden's growing crisis at the border is becoming a top priority for both sides of the aisle right now. Both Republicans and some Democrats sent delegations to the border this weekend. The group of Republican senators was led by Ted Cruz. Senator Cruz attempted to expose the dire circumstances at one PAC facility. But when he tried to film, he was blocked by a Biden administration staffer. Don't believe us? Then watch this.
Please respect. Please give dignity to the people. Please give dignity to the people.
So you work for the commissioner, your senior advisor. You were hired 2 weeks ago, and you're instructed to ask us to not have any pictures taken here.
Please respect the people,
because the political
rules.
leadership at DHS does not want the American people to know it.
Please respect the rules,
You keep
sir.
standing in front of the pictures, so
Please
you don't want the
respect the
pictures
rules.
taken. The rules are arbitrary, and
Please
they're designed to keep the American people in the dark.
dignity and respect.
So she says, please don't treat people like this as she stands in front of the holding facility crammed with migrants and children nearly on top of one another. The hypocrisy is all staggering. Joining me now representing Kentucky's 4th District, Congressman Thomas Massie. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. Congressman, obviously what we saw there is disturbing, and this is an unfortunate situation. It's a humanitarian crisis, and we know that the Biden administration is adding to this crisis when they're sending messages like, oh, you know, we're kind of for open borders, but not like, don't come here now, maybe come here later. And then we have migrants showing up with Biden t-shirts on. They say that they feel welcome here, and Biden talks about amnesty for all and all of these other bills that they're promoting. So they're creating this crisis, and now they're trying to hide it. This isn't what happened during the Trump administration. It was a free-for-all, and people were taking pictures. I remember the kids in cages thing, and the pundits going on TV crying about how kids were, quote, in burrito wrappers, when obviously those were like special blankets provided to them by the Border Patrol. They're in those same blankets. So again, the hypocrisy is astounding. It always is.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is deafening here, and this was completely unavoidable. The Biden administration is sending out the message, this beacon, to come here, yet they don't have the facilities to house these illegal immigrants. And my hat's off to Ted Cruz for trying to expose it. What is it that they don't want us to see there? I mean, we know what it is, and as you said, Biden sent out a beacon to attract, unfortunately, so many unaccompanied children. We've gone from 5,000 in January to 10,000 in February. We're pushing 20,000 here per month in the coming months. And these are unaccompanied children. That's not to mention the 100,000 of illegal immigrants who came in February who were detained. Now, how many of them are not being detained or intercepted at the border?
Absolutely. And again, there are people that are probably coming across that do have legitimate asylum claims. But what we learned over the past couple of years during the Trump administration is that a lot of those asylum claims weren't legitimate. So we have people that are coming through Mexico. If they were legitimate, why wouldn't they just stay there? If they're leaving Honduras or Guatemala or whatever, wouldn't they just like go to the next country that was convenient for them? But a lot of these people admit that they're coming here because they want to work in the United States. They want to live in the greatest country in the world. I don't blame them for wanting to come here. But at the end of the day, states and countries can't survive without borders. I mean, we can't just have a free-for-all. No one who supports open borders will say like what number we should cap that off at. Like they just have no plan, and so it's total chaos that they're trying to create. And we know at the end of the day what the Democrats are up to. They think this is like a new voting block for them. At the end of the day, that's what they want.
Yeah, and the asylum claim, that's a loophole that you could drive a truck through. I mean, when they get here, it's broadly granted, okay, but it can take a long time to vet those asylum claims, so they release them on their own recognizance, and many of them never return for the court hearing.
Yeah. So think about what Biden did in his first week in office, the executive orders he took. He said, okay, we're going to stop building the wall. By the way, that was like already paid for and there's contracts for that, so that's a waste of money. Again, the message that sends, when you stop building a wall, that shows you're not serious about border security. That means it's a free-for-all. Number 2, getting rid of the Remain in Mexico policy. That was a great policy. In fact, actually, the Mexican president and all of these other presidents of these other countries didn't seem to mind that. Like, there was pushback at first, but then they realized, okay, like we can do this. We're all in this together. You think of how much the U.S. gives these countries and funding and aid. Why would we give countries money if they don't want to work with us, if they won't respect our country? So we had, under the Trump administration, finally respect and cooperation from these countries when it came to immigration, mass migration.
Yeah, And Trump was getting it under control, had it under control. The wall was being built. Meanwhile, while Biden shut down that wall and reduced the effort at the border, he built a wall. Well, Pelosi and the Democrats built a wall around Congress with razor wire, 10-foot walls. They would probably claim those would be inhumane walls at the border, but they built a wall around Congress. They stopped building the wall at the border, and they sent National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. Why can't those troops be providing assistance at the border instead of doing nothing around the Capitol?
Exactly. I think what a lot of Republican voters are looking at, they say, oh, well, you know, Trump administration did a pretty good job and we have all these Republicans going down to the border and speaking about it. But what are they going to do about it? Even during Trump's time in office, like everything that he was trying to push through, there was a lot of pushback from Republicans and it wasn't easy to get the funding. He had a lot of challenges getting Republicans on board with his agenda to actually execute. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to actually do it. And so, you know, I see all these Republicans coming out and speaking out against it. But what's actually going to be done, especially when we have Biden in office and the Democrats in control?
I'm glad you brought that up. I was the only Republican not to vote for Speaker Paul Ryan in 2016 after Trump was elected, because I knew Paul Ryan was going to oppose President Trump on all of his efforts, and he did. Eventually, Paul Ryan left. But it was too late at that point. We were in the minority. What we need to do, Stephanie, is the next time we get in the majority, and hopefully that's, you know, at the next election cycle, we need to be bold and we need to take care of these problems. Of course, we won't have a White House to support this, but we can do things through the power of the purse, and we shouldn't be chicken about it, which they have been in the past. Everybody's afraid of a shutdown, but that's just a bluff. We need to pass separate spending bills, and the spending bill that deals with the border needs to be separate from the other, so it can't be taken hostage by this president.
I saw some polling, if you believe the polls. I usually don't because they get it wrong a lot. But it said public opinion about Biden's handling of the immigration crisis is not good. So they're going to have to do something drastic. They can't keep calling it just a challenge. It is a crisis. It's actually, I would call it a national emergency. They've even sent FEMA down there. So clearly their messaging is totally mixed up. I wanted to get your reaction to this. I found this story to be very shocking. It made my heart sink. It's just such a terrible story. It happened in Washington, D.C. Over the weekend. Two teenage girls were arrested on charges of a felony murder and armed carjacking. They were charged with the death of Uber Eats driver Mohammed Anwar. We have the video clip. I must warn our viewers, it is rather graphic. Roll tape.
They're thieves.
What's going on?
Call the cops. They're trying to steal a car. This is my car. They stole a car? They said it's a car. Yeah, he is their car. No, this is my car. They want to stop it! Oh my God, somebody just stole. She's stealing their car.
So I want to be careful here and consistent. I always say people shouldn't jump to conclusions based off of videos that they've seen that are going viral. That being said, according to reports, the details are still being investigated. And yeah, from what we know, these teenagers attempted to carjack this man and now he lost his life. You know, there are reports about this, but I don't think it's getting the coverage that it actually deserves. If you think about the young man, Nicholas Sandmann, who smirked at a guy the wrong way, according to the left, who happened to have a MAGA hat on, how much news that created, versus this, a man's life lost. And you start asking, like, what is going on with our teenagers? Why would teenagers do something like this? Two young women.
Yeah, I'm glad you showed that. I mean, I feel terrible for the family of that man. But look, America's the land of opportunity. And here's a guy who was, you know, providing his own income by using his own car. It wasn't a company car. He can't let it get stolen, or he may have no way to provide for himself and his family. So he tried to keep his own car. It was stolen. And you know, those young women who took the car, that's the result of years of coddling that type of crime, where carjackings, you know, you don't even serve any jail time, for instance, for stealing somebody's car, and that's probably what they had in mind. And they were starting down a path probably of years of crime. But we need to, you know, we need to be serious about car theft, for instance. I know people say, oh, it's just a car, it's just property, you should let it go, you shouldn't try to defend it. But we absolutely should, as a society, respect other people's property. And when people steal, they need to go to jail for that.
Exactly. And as we know, Washington, D.C. has seen a surge in crime. Many big cities across the country have seen surges in crime. And it all goes to this defunded police effort, the attack on law enforcement. As you pointed out, people getting slapped on the wrist for, quote, minor crimes encourages this type of behavior. So there's other cities where if you only, quote, steal $1,000, that they're not going to come after you. So people literally bring calculators into the store to make sure that they steal less than $1,000. And in Washington, D.C., a couple years ago, I was robbed by teenagers as well. So it's just, and they never got in trouble. Not even a slap on the wrist. They totally got away with it, and it happened in a touristy area right next to the White House. And so you have to wonder what is going on with our teenagers. Obviously, not all teenagers are committing terrible crimes, but it does make you wonder.
Yeah, the mayor of Louisville, Kentucky announced last year when the COVID hit that they were just too busy and they were not going to respond to car thefts and burglaries. And that's just a shame. I mean, that's what we rely on police for, and that's what they should be doing.
Exactly. And as you pointed out, any crime like this is still traumatizing for the victim. I will never forget what happened to me. And every time I'm walking, I'm looking over my shoulder, looking around. If I feel something that seems like it's off, it's probably off. And that's how I felt that day. But I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm just imagining things. And so, yeah, I mean, it is traumatizing for the victims of even, quote, smaller crimes. And so it's a discussion that needs to be had. That's for sure. Well, Congressman, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Stephanie.
Of course, coming up next, the fight over equal pay for men and women intensifies.